Zara Okoye stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport with a suitcase full of secrets and a heart heavy with purpose. The air was crisp, the terminal gleaming, and the city beyond pulsed with ambition. Seoul was beautiful, but she hadn't come for beauty. She came for revenge. 26 years old, Nigerian, and brilliant, Zara had earned a scholarship to Korea University's law program. On paper, she was here to study international justice. In reality, she was chasing ghosts. Her older brother, Kelechi, had died 2 years ago. Official reports said overdose. Zara knew better. He'd been investigating a trafficking ring that stretched from Lagos to Busan, and the last name he'd written in his journal before disappearing was Han. The Han Syndicate, Korea's most powerful underground empire. Untouchable, invisible, deadly. Zara had spent the last year preparing, learning Korean, studying the law, building contacts, and now she was here, not just to expose the syndicate, but to destroy the man who ran its operations. Seo Dae-jin. Her first week in Seoul was quiet. She attended lectures, smiled politely, and kept her head down. But every night she worked. She hacked, she tracked, she planned. Dae-jin wasn't the face of the syndicate, that was Ji-hoon Han, the heir. But Dae-jin was the strategist, the fixer, the man behind the curtain. Zara had studied him obsessively. 30 years old, Ivy League educated, fluent in 5 languages, no criminal record, no known weaknesses. Until now, she'd found a thread, a shell company tied to a warehouse in Busan. It was enough to plant evidence, enough to make him look guilty, enough to make him bleed. The night she set the trap, Seoul was buzzing with rain and neon. Zara wore a black hoodie and gloves, her laptop humming in the corner of her tiny dorm room. She uploaded the files, falsified financial records, encrypted messages, and a trail that pointed directly to Dae-jin. She sent them anonymously to a journalist she'd met at a legal ethics conference. Then she waited. The story broke within hours. Korean business strategist linked to international crime ring. Dae-jin's name was everywhere. His photo, his reputation, his silence. Zara watched it unfold with a strange mix of triumph and dread. She'd done it. She'd framed a Korean mafia. But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, she woke to silence. Her phone was dead. Her laptop wouldn't turn on. Her dorm room door was unlocked. She stepped outside, and 2 men in suits were waiting. "Miss Okoye," one said in perfect English. "Mr. Seo would like a word." Zara's chest thudded like a drum. Her breath caught between running and screaming. But her legs froze as the 2 shadows closed in, their sneers slicing through the hallway. She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat burning as her eyes darted around for escape. And who are you?" Her voice cracked, trembling as she forced the words out. They exchanged a scoff, one stepping closer, boots grinding against the tiles. "You think you can just walk away after all the crap you posted online?" he hissed, his lip curling. "Get ready to face something worse than death." The words slithered into her ears, sharp enough to cut, but she tightened her fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms. Fear clawed at her ribs, yet another fire pushed through, the memory of her brother's lifeless face, the weight of revenge pressing on her shoulders. Even if it costs her life, she would still do it. She nodded once. "Let's go." They drove in silence through the city, past glass towers and hidden alleys, until they reached a private compound tucked behind a wall of bamboo and steel. Inside, everything was quiet, clean, controlled. Zara was led to a room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a single chair. Dae-jin was already there. He stood by the window, dressed in a charcoal suit, his face unreadable. "You're smarter than I expected," he said without turning, voice low as gravel. Zara said nothing. He pivoted then, slow enough to make the moment taut, eyes cutting into her like a blade. "You framed me." His words landed flat, precise. She met his stare, unblinking. "You deserved it," she said, calm as a held breath. He scanned her from head to toe, head tilted, nostrils flaring. No one had ever talked back to him like that. Not even a man. Anger flared behind his eyes. His fingers twitched as if to strike, but he forced it down, jaw clenching. He took a deliberate step forward, boots whispering on the floor. "You think you know what justice looks like," he said, voice smooth but dangerous. The threat coiled under the words. "I know what it feels like," she said. "It feels like losing your brother and watching the world pretend it didn't happen." Dejin paused. "Kalechi Okoye." Zara's breath hitched. You knew him?" she whispered. Dejin shrugged, glass catching the light as he poured. "I tried to protect him," he said, tone flat. "But he got too close." Her voice trembled. "You killed him," he scoffed. "No," he said, "but I know who did." She stared at him, pulse stuttering, disbelief and hope tangling in her chest. "I can help you," he offered, voice low. He leaned forward, eyes searching hers. "But you'll have to help me first." Zara sat across from Co. Dejin in a room that felt less like a meeting space and more like a chessboard. Every detail deliberate, from the dim wash of the overhead light to the silence pressing between them, even the exact distance between their chairs. He hadn't shifted once since she walked in. She hated how calm he looked. "You said you knew who killed my brother?" she murmured, leaning forward, her voice cutting through the stillness. "I do," Dejin replied smoothly, not a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "But truth comes with a price." Zara's fingers curled against her knees. "You think I'll work for you?" He studied her like a move already made, a piece already trapped. "I think you already have," he said, his lips barely curved. "You exposed a warehouse I was trying to shut down. You forced my father's hand. You've made enemies." He paused, letting the silence strike before the next blow. "Now you need protection." "I don't need your protection," she snapped. "You do," he said, "because you're not just a law student anymore. You're a threat, and threats don't last long in my world." Zara's fists clenched. "You're the reason my brother's dead." "No," Dejin said quietly. "I was the reason he got close, but I wasn't the one who pulled the trigger." She stared at him, heart pounding. "Then who did?" Dejin stood and walked to the window. "A man named Park Sango. Diplomatic immunity. Untouchable. He runs the trafficking routes through Busan. Your brother found out. He paid the price." Zara felt the room tilt. Park Sango. She'd seen the name in her brother's journal. Circled, underlined, but never explained. "You're lying," she said. "I wish I was," Dejin replied. "But if you want proof, you'll have to help me take him down." The deal was simple and impossible. Zara would pose as a legal intern at a firm tied to Park Sango's network. She'd gather lots of useful information which were kept a secret, pass it to Dejin, and stay alive. In return, Dejin would give her access to everything. Files, contacts, and the truth. She didn't trust him, not even a little, but she trusted herself. And she wanted justice more than she wanted safety. The next few weeks blurred into tension and silence. Zara lived out of a secure apartment Dejin's team had chosen for her. Bare walls, too many locks, and the constant hum of surveillance. She wore a wire until it felt like a second skin. She memorized names whispered in smoke-filled rooms. She forced smiles at men whose touch made her stomach turn. Every night, without fail, she met Dejin in a tucked-away cafe in Itaewon. The place smelled of burnt espresso and rain-soaked streets. They spoke in codes that tasted like secrets, slid files across the table like playing cards, and clashed over strategy until the cafe's neon lights buzzed above their heads. "You're reckless," he said one night, voice clipped after she had cornered a client too directly. "I'm angry," she shot back, fire under her words. "That's different." He leaned back, eyes narrowing, studying her like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. "Anger gets people killed." She leaned in, close enough for him to catch the edge in her voice. "So does silence." Their eyes locked, neither willing to flinch. The air crackled between them, charged and dangerous. more like two storms circling each other, waiting for the clash. Zara pushed the door and it swung inward on a soft creak. She stopped on the threshold, every muscle taut. The apartment looked so scattered. Her clothes, her books, everything, and the worst part, her laptop was gone. Her chest dropped like a stone. She dialed Deepening before she let herself think. The line clicked. His voice came steady, too calm. "They're watching you. You're getting too close." "I'm not backing down," she said, jaw tight. "I didn't ask you to." He didn't need to say more. Silence stretched between them like a held breath. "Are you okay?" he asked finally. Zara swallowed. The word lodged in her throat. "No." Another pause. "Do you want me to come over?" he offered. She stayed quiet, listening to the apartment breathe around her, to the distant hiss of the street below. She didn't say yes and she didn't say no. She only waited. 20 minutes later, he was there. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, the city humming outside. "I used to think justice was simple," Zara said. "Find the bad guy, expose him, move on." "It's never simple," Deepening replied, "especially when the bad guy wears a suit and smiles for the cameras." She looked at him. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer right away. "Because I couldn't save your brother," he said finally. "And I don't want to fail you too." Zara's throat tightened. She hated how much that meant to her. "You're not who I thought you were," she whispered. "Neither are you," he said. They sat in silence, the distance between them shrinking. And for the first time, Zara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Zara hadn't expected silence to feel so loud. She sat alone in the secure apartment Deepening had arranged, staring at the wall where her laptop used to be. The break-in had rattled her more than she admitted. No one had touched her. No one had left a message. But the absence of violence was its own kind of threat. They wanted her to be afraid. She wasn't. But she was tired. Her phone buzzed. A message from Deepening. "Come to the rooftop. We need to talk." She hesitated, then grabbed her coat. The rooftop was quiet, lit only by the glow of the city below. Deepening stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, his suit jacket fluttering slightly in the wind. "You're being watched," he said without turning. "I figured," Zara replied. He turned to face her. "They're not just watching. They're waiting." "For what?" "For you to slip, to panic, to run." Zara stepped closer. "I'm not running." Deepening studied her. "You should." She met his gaze. "Why haven't you?" He didn't answer, just looked out over the skyline. "I used to think I could fix everything," he said. "Clean up the mess. Protect the people who mattered." Zara's voice softened. "And now I realize I'm part of the mess." She exhaled. "You're not the only one." He turned to her again. "You're not like the others." "Because I'm angry? Because you're honest." Zara laughed bitterly. "I lied to you. I framed you. And I still trust you more than anyone in my world." That stopped her cold. She looked at him, really looked. The sharp jawline, the tired eyes, the weight he carried like armor. He wasn't just dangerous. He was exhausted. "You shouldn't trust me," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I do." They sat on the rooftop ledge, legs dangling over the edge, the city humming beneath them. Zara pulled her coat tighter. "Do you ever wish you'd chosen a different life?" Deepening nodded. "Every day." "Then why stay?" He paused. "Because leaving means admitting I was wrong. And I don't know who I am without this." Zara looked at him. "You're not your father. You're not the syndicate. You're just Deepening." He smiled faintly. "You sound like my mother." Zara blinked. "She's gone." He nodded. "Cancer. 10 years ago." "I'm sorry. She used to say I was born with too much silence in my soul." Zara tilted her head. "And what do you think?" "I think she was right." The next day, Zara met a contact inside the legal firm tied to Park Sango. The man was slick, too smooth in his suit and smile, the kind who hid knives behind compliments. He offered her coffee, praised her accent, asked questions that sounded harmless but dug too deep. He asks questions about her family, and then her brother, calling him a smart but gullible boy. There's also someone that's exactly like you, but it's a boy. He's a smart one but went a bit too far. She smiled back, feigned innocence, let her pen scratch across the page. But her pulse drummed beneath the table. That night she slipped the intel to Dae-jin. They met in a quiet bookstore wedged between two alleys in Hongdae. The smell of paper and dust their only witness. He's planning a shipment, Zara whispered, sliding the notes across the table. Next week, Busan Port. Dae-jin scanned the page, then gave a short nod. I'll intercept it. She stepped out of the law firm with her nerves shredded raw. Park Sang-go's smile still clung to her thoughts. The same smile her brother had written about in his journal. Polished, hollow, lethal. He had offered her tea, praised her diligence, the perfect host. Then, almost lazily, he'd said, "Your brother was brave, but bravery without caution is suicide." Zara hadn't flinched, hadn't given him the satisfaction. She had smiled, nodded, excused herself. Now she stood above the river, the city lights fractured across the dark water, her hands shaking around the phone. She dialed. The line clicked. "I need to see you," she whispered. They met at a quiet restaurant in Siakon, tucked between two art galleries. The place was dimly lit, with wooden beams and soft jazz playing in the background. Dae-jin was already seated in a corner booth, dressed in a black turtleneck and coat, his face shadowed by the low light. Zara slid into the seat across from him, her eyes tired, her voice low. He mentioned Kalechi. Dae-jin's expression didn't change, but his fingers curled slightly around his glass. What did he say? That he was brave. But bravery without caution is suicide. What was that supposed to mean? Dae-jin nodded slowly. That's how they justify murder. By blaming the victim. Zara leaned forward. I want to confront him. No, Dae-jin said immediately. Not yet. I'm done waiting. You're not ready. Zara's voice rose. I've been ready since the day I buried my brother. The waiter approached, but Dae-jin waved him off. His eyes locked onto Zara's. You confront him now, he'll bury you too. Zara sat back, breathing hard. Then what's the plan? Dae-jin pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were surveillance photos, financial records, and a list of names. This is his network, his leverage. We cut it off piece by piece. Zara scanned the pages, her fingers trembling. How did you get this? I've been building it for years, he said. Waiting for someone like you. She looked up. Someone angry? Someone brave. Later that night, they returned to Dae-jin's private compound. A sleek, modern building nestled in the hills above Seoul. The interior was minimalist. Concrete walls, glass panels, and warm wood accents. It felt like a fortress disguised as a home. Zara sat on the edge of the leather couch, the folder spread open on her lap. Her eyes scanned the papers again and again, words blurring together. Across the room, Dae-jin stood at the window, the glow of the city lights painting his profile in silver and shadow. Her head dipped. Sleep tugged at her, heavy and insistent. She blinked hard, tried to focus, even yawned as the papers slipped from her fingers. Just as she was about to nod off, Dae-jin moved. His hand braced against the arm of the couch, keeping her head from hitting it. The sudden touch jolted her awake. You need to sleep, Zara, he said, voice steady. We'll continue this tomorrow. She shook her head stubbornly, clutching the folder tighter. No, I can still. Before she could finish, he leaned in and plucked the folder from her grasp. Give it back, she snapped, sitting up straighter. You don't know what I'm going through. Hand it over. Her defiance made his lips twitch in the ghost of a smile. He only shook his head. Calm down, he said gently, eyes glinting as if amused by her fire. She lunged to grab the folder again. The couch shifted beneath them, and in the struggle they both lost balance, falling back against the cushions. For one breathless moment, their faces were inches apart, her lips nearly brushing his. Zara froze, her heartbeat hammering as their eyes locked. She pushed against him, trying to sit up, but his hands slipped to her waist, steadying her in place. "Let me go," she demanded, her voice unsteady. He didn't move. His gaze lingered on her, voice dropping into something softer, almost vulnerable. "You're so pretty, Zara. I'm jealous of your ex. That he had you." Her chest tightened at the words, the confession slipping past her defenses no matter how hard she tried to ignore it. "Do you hate me?" he asked quietly. Zara's breath caught. "I don't hate you," she admitted, "but I don't trust you either." Daejin closed his eyes for a moment, as if the answer both hurt and relieved him. When he looked at her again, his voice was low, steady, and almost a promise. "Then let me earn it." The next morning, Zara woke up in the guest room of Daejin's compound. The sun filtered through sheer curtains, casting soft light across the room. She sat up slowly, her body aching from tension, her mind racing. She dressed in black slacks and a fitted blouse and walked downstairs. Daejin was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making coffee. The smell of roasted beans and cinnamon filled the air. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "I survive," he replied. She sat at the counter. "What's next?" "We hit the warehouse tonight," he said. "Park's shipment is arriving. If we intercept it, we expose him." Zara nodded. "I want to be there." Daejin hesitated. "It's dangerous." "I'm not asking." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." That night, they drove to Busan in silence. The highway was slick with rain, the city lights blurring past. Zara sat in the passenger seat, her fingers curled around the edge of her coat. Daejin glanced at her. "You don't have to do this." "I do," she said. "For Kalechi." They arrived at the port just after midnight. The warehouse loomed ahead, steel walls, floodlights, and armed guards. Daejin handed her an earpiece. "Stay close. Don't speak unless I tell you." Zara nodded, her heart pounding. They moved through the shadows, slipping past guards, ducking behind crates. Inside the warehouse, crates were being loaded onto trucks, marked with diplomatic seals. Daejin whispered, "This is it." Zara pulled out her phone and began recording. Suddenly, a voice rang out. "Stop!" They turned. Park Sang-go stood at the entrance, flanked by two men with guns. "Well," he said, smiling, "I was wondering when you'd show up." Daejin stepped forward. "It's over, Sang-go." Park laughed. "Do you think this changes anything? I own the law. I own the silence." Zara stepped beside Daejin. "Not anymore." She held up her phone, the recording still running. Park's smile faltered. "You'll regret this," he said. "I already do," Zara replied. "But not as much as you will." The warehouse raid went viral overnight. Shaky, raw footage of Park Sang-go's diplomatic crates, and Zara standing in front of them, voice steady though her hands trembled, splashed. Across every screen, the public roared. The government fumbled. Park didn't vanish, he fought back. By morning, he'd released a statement. The crates were misunderstood, the footage doctored, and Zara a foreign agitator with a vendetta. Zara watched the press conference from Daejin's compound, perched on the edge of the couch, fists knotted in her lap. Her jaw worked, a small, furious animal. "He's going to walk out freely, that bastard," she spat. Daejin loomed behind her, arms folded, jaw tight as wire. "Not if I burn the rest," he said, then turned and went into his office without another word. Zara rose and followed. The office smelled of old paper and machine oil. Maps and files covered the walls. Encrypted drives lined a shelf like silent witnesses. Daejin opened a drawer and dropped a thick folder on the desk with a flat, final thud. "This is everything," he said, tapping the folder. "Every deal, every bribe, every name." He let the weight of it hang between them. Zara stared down at the stack of paper, at the neat columns of dates and sums. "Looks like you've been building this for years," she said, voice small with something like awe. I was waiting for someone who could finish it, Daejin replied, and his eyes held hers long enough that she felt the phrase land. She looked up, baffled. Why not you? He closed his mouth, a slow exhale. Because I'm part of it. The confession came blunt and cold. For a beat the room lost its edges. Zara swallowed, the folder suddenly heavier in her hands. The truth rearranged the room, a list of names that could either free them or bury them both. They spent the next 2 days compiling evidence. Zara worked non-stop, her eyes red, her voice hoarse. Daejin barely slept. He coordinated leaks, contacted journalists, and prepared for the fallout. On the third night, they sat in the living room, buried beneath empty coffee cups and scattered papers, both running on fumes. Zara leaned back against the couch, exhaustion etched across her face. When this is over, what happens to you? Daejin said nothing. She turned, searching his profile in the dim light. You'll be arrested. He gave a single nod. Probably. You could run. I won't. Her voice cracked. Why? He finally met her gaze, eyes heavy with a truth he could no longer dodge. Because I want to be free, and freedom means facing what I've done. Tears stung her eyes. I don't want to lose you. You never had me, he murmured, softer than a sigh. Not really. Zara's hand found his fingers trembling as she gripped him. I did, she whispered. I do. He closed his hand around hers, holding on like it was the last tether keeping him from sinking. I'm scared, she admitted. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. So am I. The next morning, Daejin surrendered. Zara stood outside the courthouse, swallowed by a sea of reporters and flashing cameras, her heart splitting as he walked past in handcuffs. He didn't speak. He didn't look back. But she saw it anyway, peace flickering in his eyes, as if the weight he carried had finally been set down. Zara raised her chin and gave the press everything. The files, the recordings, the truth. By the week's end, Park Sang-go was stripped of immunity, arrested, tried, convicted, a life sentence for killing her brother. Justice at last. But it didn't taste like victory. Months passed. Zara returned to Nigeria briefly, then came back to Seoul. She launched a non-profit for victims of trafficking, named after her brother, the Kalechi Foundation. Her face was on billboards, her voice on panels, but her heart, still bruised. She visited Daejin once a month. The prison was cold, sterile, and quiet. He never asked for updates. He just asked how she was. One day she brought him a sketch, a logo for the foundation. He studied it, then smiled. He'd proud. Zara nodded. So would your mother. They sat in silence, the kind that felt like home. Before she left, he stood. You kissed me with fury, he said. She smiled. And you caught fire. He stepped closer. So, can I kiss you with peace? She didn't answer. She just leaned in. He never asked about the case, never about the headlines. He only asked about her. A year later, Daejin walked free. They spent their days together, rebuilding, laughing in ways neither thought possible. Zara carried their child, and when he finally knelt and offered her a ring, her yes came with a smile so wide it outshone the past. But joy lasted only a heartbeat. The crack of a gunshot tore through the air, shattering the moment. Their smiles still stretched across their faces as the world broke horribly around them.
Hi viewers. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, share and comment, for more captivating folktales and unforgettable stories.